Welcome to the TechRecruit podcast. My name is Stacey Broadwell. I will be your host. And today we have the very popular, the very much endorsed to me, Miss Sarah Goldberg. Welcome, Sarah.
Hey, thanks for having me.
Yeah, we are so very excited to talk. I have so many questions for you, and I know our audience is going to be very excited to learn some of the things that you have to offer. Sarah, you are the sourcing engagement lead for Objective Paradigm, and we're going to talk about that. But real quick, I want to give a quick shout out to our sponsors, ZipRecruiter. ZipRecruiter is the smartest way to hire. They are rated #1 in the US. You can send your jobs to 100 plus job boards with one submission. You receive thousands of candidates every day, and they're all in one place. You can try it free today by going to ziprecruiter.com and see why over 1 million companies have already started using ZipRecruiter. That's ziprecruiter.com. Hacker Earth. Skills reveal what resumes can't hide. Run accurate skills assessments and hire developers who are right for the job. Hacker Earth is trusted by thousands of companies. You can start your free 14-day trial today at hackerearth.com. Thank you very much for sponsoring the TechRecruit podcast and conference. Sarah, back to you. Now, you are the sourcing engagement lead for Objective Paradigm. Tell me what it is that you do.
Yeah, so Objective Paradigm is an IT recruiting firm. We're a third-party agency, and we offer a variety of services. Where I sort of come in is on the sourcing services. So Objective Paradigm offers sourcing as a service, where if you are a recruiting team and you know what you're doing, you can close folks, you've got processes down, but you're just really struggling filling the funnel with all that top of funnel activity, we can come in and help out. My role specifically as engagement lead is I actually have a couple of clients at any one time where I'm sitting in on intake meetings and making sure that we understand, hey, this is the role, here's who you need to work for, here's who you need to look for, and here's how we can best do it, make sure we're delivering the best candidates and tools for our clients, in addition to continuing to do hands-on sourcing. So it's fun, it's flexible, but really great, and I get to, source all day. What could be better?
Have you always been in sourcing? How did you start your career path into recruiting? I find like there's always a different path. How did you get started?
Right? Like, I'm not sure anyone ever says like, I'm going to go to college to be a recruiter. So my background is very academic. I studied ancient Greek. So writing on rocks that has survived for centuries is really my jam. And I graduated with a degree from U Chicago in classical languages and literature. And I was like, I have no idea what to do with this. It's really cool. I will talk your ear off about epigraphy and, Greek literature if you ever give me the chance to. But I didn't really want to go to grad school, pursue an academic path. So I started just looking for any kind of research roles. Came across OP. They had sourcing and research, and I looked through the job description and I was like, databases and Boolean strings, I can do that. If I can write a Boolean string that's going to find different tablets that have, dialects of different ways of saying various boring proclamations in ancient Greek, I can teach myself the difference between Java and JavaScript and use Google as a database to find those candidates. And yeah, it's been a natural fit so far.
It's interesting how you can find that parallel in what you went to school and what you're passionate about, and find that passion within what you're doing now, with the research and then being able to transcribe messages into something that's meaningful. And you found that, and you find that satisfaction in that role. I completely agree with that, because I was a financial analyst previous to doing recruitment, and it was a lot of research. It was a lot of like all that stuff we do with the market mapping. I was in the library looking at census reports and looking into like business, financials. And there's an element to that. Granted, on the front end, in the sourcing portion, initial research, but you find that parallel and you find that attraction to it. Also, I'm more social, but that's so fascinating. As you were telling me about the Greek literature, I have to ask, is there a Greek figure that you liked the most?
I got to go with Aeschylus. Not necessarily his personality. I don't know too much about him as a person, but I did a research project on the Oresteia. I guess research project, literature translation. So the Oresteia is the story of Agamemnon and, his adventures and misadventures returning from the Trojan War. Spoiler alert, it doesn't end well. But it was just really fascinating to me. So and the Oresteia is also the only trilogy that has survived intact. That this can be an hour-long conversation about ancient Greek drama if you want it to be. But the way that they actually,
hours. You did warn us,
right?
Yeah.
But the way that they performed Greek tragedy is they would have like day-long events and they would perform 3 plays, not always linked. And then they would do a very funny comic piece afterwards. Not one of the comedies that we have. But anyways, the Oresteia is the only play that we've got from ancient Greece that we've got all 3 pieces of. And if you ever look and you're like, oh wait, but Sophocles has some. Those are pieces that have been traditionally put together after the fact, but weren't performed all on the same day. There's your useless trivia for the day.
Well, you can apply that to recruiting as well. Information from the hiring manager isn't always there. And sometimes when you get that full description, you're like, wow, it's like an anomaly in history. Okay.
Yes.
Yeah. So that's interesting. So you studied Greece or ancient Greek and at the University of Chicago, and then you started working in recruitment and sourcing right out of college.
Yeah.
And you were like,
yes.
wow, this is really awesome. Or were you kind of like, okay, I'll do this for a while? And
no, I think as soon as I started actually realizing what the job was and the potential for how you can make it better as an industry as well. I mean, I realize I've only got 5 years of experience doing it, but there are lots of really fascinating challenges for us right now where we've got all sorts of really cool stuff that we can do. And I realized, I get to find people and connect with them. That's a challenge that remains interesting every day.
And we'll get to that. You are somebody who has been, you have a reputation for being an amazing sourcer. You know this about yourself?
I don't know. I'm still a little bit like you're telling me, so it must be true. I feel like I just do my job and try to do it the best job that I can. That's what it's about, right?
There was this moment I was like, who do we know in Chicago who would want to speak at Midwest TechRecruit, who can impart their wisdom on our audience? And you were recommended to me so many times, and it just so happens that you were available. And so I'm just like, I had all these questions that I wanted to ask you, and one of them being, I wanted to talk about your favorite roles that you are like, I'm the go-to person if you have this role. My team always like pulls me in. And then maybe what your, what do you call it? Your Achilles heel to go back to the one that you just don't like. What are your favorite roles and what's your least favorite roles to work on?
Yeah. So one thing that I will say is one of my favorite parts about my job is that it always changes. So there's still roles that I get and I'm just like, I've never heard of this before. This is a whole new world to explore. And I love the flexibility of being able to look for new things. I think some of the favorite roles that I've ever worked on have been in the data science world, just because data scientists, if you can figure out what they're actually working on and, go through different conferences that they might attend or places where they've published, if you can say, hey, I've got a question about this really specific thing that you're talking about, they will talk to you. They might not be looking for a new job. They might not ever actually turn into a placement, but you can get those conversations started really easily. And it is pretty clear to say, oh, this is the kind of stuff that you work on. So I think that would have to be my favorite. My least favorite is really challenging because I really do love, the go out and find it part. I think some of the roles that I've had least success with have actually been sales roles. We work on them a lot and I still can find folks. But I feel like software as a service sales are probably like the second most most common roles that we work on. They're definitely fun. I can definitely find the folks and engage them. They're just less fun than, data scientists and software engineers.
That's interesting. I feel similar in project management and product management and program management roles. I would say for me, when I get those roles, I get so inundated with every single candidate in the world who believes that they could do that role and they just don't really. And so you're just going through I get inundated so heavily with just everything. I think that's probably my least favorite role to work on. And a lot of it comes down to not just like, the background and the experience and what have you, but just their personality, because oftentimes it's dealing with teams and it's, that sort of thing. I don't know if you've had that experience.
Yeah, I mean, I don't usually work with folks who are applying, just because we kind of silo it off. So I don't, I can sort of pick and choose who I talk to because it's who do I make the choice to reach out to, with the knowledge that there's someone else who's going to actually be looking at all of those applicants. But yeah, I don't know. I did work on a pretty challenging, I think the challenges that I've had with product program management roles is that product is that every different client will have a different definition of this is what a product manager does versus a program manager does, and trying to think, okay, what's the background that I actually need to look for? It's so much less clear cut on a lot of times. Where you think, okay, are they going to be executing on a roadmap or setting it or just making sure things happen? All of these are extremely important, but trying to find the exact right person is pretty challenging.
Yeah, that would be my challenging position. I'm with you on the data scientist because my background is actually a financial analyst. And so I always had this if I was still an analyst and, or what would I be doing? I'd be a data scientist now, but quite honestly, I'm way more social. So tell me, when you get those data science roles, I'm curious, what's your initial process? You got the role, how does that come to you? And then how do you begin your search?
Yeah, so I get the role. Usually I'll meet with the client, do standard intake, tell me about the challenges, tell me about the successes, I always try to find whether the client has someone that they tried to get and couldn't, or if I can go and just look and see, oh, this is the person who was in the role now or recently left. I love seeing kind of that sample profile, looking through a career path. But then, my first step is research. I will, I'll go to Google, make sure that I know, especially if it's a new technology, I want to know everything there is about everything technical on that page. But beyond just knowing, okay, here's how these different technical pieces go together, I think it's really important to sort of understand the career path that one might take. So I'll try to see, if I can find current employees who have done similar stuff, or, talk to the hiring manager if I can, to say, what are you looking for ideally? Because trying to think not just, okay, what is someone doing right now that might have prepared them for this role, but what was someone doing 5 years ago that's going to put them in a place to be really successful at this role now? Because when you're researching things or sourcing, it's really easy to focus on okay, I need the right now. I need to go to, I'm going to look at people who are open to opportunities, who've got resumes up and ready right this second, and those are the people I'm going to find. But especially if you're working on, experienced hiring, going back and saying, okay, where was this person 5 years ago, 10 years ago? That data is still out there in the world, right? Like that's, we still have tablets from 2000 years ago. We still have job descriptions and resumes in the internet from 10 years ago. You have people who, if you are looking for, say, a data scientist who's got like 3 years of experience with data visualization or something like that, you can go back and look for people who are attending boot camps and intro to R for data science 3 years ago, and go through and say, okay, that person was doing some introductory stuff. There's no guarantee that they made it through. I'm sure there's always a lot of drop off. People leave, they change their career path for whatever reason. But if you're finding folks who don't have a lot of information about themselves online, or who don't have a lot of information about what they're doing right now, it has paid off a couple of times.
So right there, I mean, some things that you mentioned, I mean, asking the hiring manager about a sample profile of the person who left, or maybe somebody who is even still on the team. Looking for people in that company who've had that career path and what they were doing 3 years ago or 5 years ago before they got that, and then doing searches on that particular skill set, like you said, like those accelerator programs, like the intro to R or what have you, and then finding where that person might be now. Those are such creative approaches. And then I also like what you said about conferences. That to me, like, that is almost like conferences are like taking somebody else's list of stellar people and listing them for you. I love looking at conferences and those are typically really extroverted people, and they're more open to give you recommendations than other people as well.
Yeah, no, there's so much information that people put out about themselves online that they just don't get asked about a lot, right? Yeah. So if you do go through conferences, right, you find people who are speaking at conferences, attending them. That's sometimes a little bit trickier to get the attendee lists than the speaking lists, which are out there in the world forever. But you can say, hey, it's extremely easy to personalize what you're saying, and it doesn't take a lot of effort. Like, you can go through, every speaker from a conference 2 years ago and say, hey, this was a really interesting thing that you did 2 years ago. Want to know what you're up to now? Or even, stuff that you're doing now. Doesn't need to be, you don't need to just look for stuff in the past. But it gives you an easy way to personalize engagement, because you say, oh, you're talking about this specific thing at this specific place that's really interesting to me. So you get that. It doesn't take a ton of effort if you're going to it from the conference side, instead of getting, here's your candidate that you want to reach out to. Let's find out everything about them. And it's a way of really just increasing your engagement and showing, hey, I do care. I did some research into you. I'm not just sending this to 5,000 people. I think even at an agency, you can do that. You can still engage on a human-to-human level if you just leave some time to like do that networking, because that's going to pay off down the road. Like whether I do think that, even if you do have to hit your call list, if you keep folks in, if you keep engaging folks and you keep on saying like, hey, this is really cool, this is a project, like, especially if you've got the right clients for it, you've got, your profile, the profiles that you can always place, like, those relationships will definitely pay off. There are a couple of people that I've managed to place where it's like, I'm going to message you every 3 months, and you're going to get really annoyed maybe, because I'm going to be sitting there saying like, hey, it's been 3 months. You weren't interested then, but just got to shoot my shot. No harm in reaching out. Hope all is well with you. And people always get back and they're like, wow, no other recruiters do this. I'm just like, it's so easy. Especially, I will say, I don't do my 3-month outreach every 3 months to everyone that I've ever messaged. But folks who get back to me and say, hey, the timing isn't right now, like, you need to make sure to keep in touch with those folks. I think everyone these days has some kind of calendar. I think it's worth it to say, like, it takes maybe an extra 30 seconds when someone responds to you to put in a reminder that says, hey, reach back out to this person, but it's worth it.
We used Max Hire when I first started my agency, IT Talent Search, and then they got bought by Bullhorn. And I haven't like done the transition yet because I took time off to have my babies. And I'm curious, like, how long have you been using Bullhorn? Do you like it?
I've been using Bullhorn for a very, very long time. I think definitely as long as I've been at OP. I think, yeah, at least 10 years, probably longer. I'm not even sure if there's a time when OP wasn't using something that is Bullhorn. And yeah, it is. There's a lot to like about it. We can definitely, it's highly customizable where you can say, we want this field, we want to make sure we've got this. And yeah, it's been working for us.
You can't automate, and not that you automate your alerts in what, Outlook? Do you use Outlook for your email?
Just through Bullhorn. You can set tasks.
Okay.
So it doesn't automate the full email, especially because I'm going to be on, right, like between email, LinkedIn, Twitter, there are all sorts of different places where I've messaged folks. So it doesn't actually go through and say like, hey, we're going to, it doesn't automate the actual sending of the message. But it says, hey, Sarah, 3 months ago, Sarah said to reach out to this person. And then I get that in my inbox.
Do you email within Bullhorn, or do you email within like Outlook or another like Gmail?
Oh yeah, I usually send emails through Gmail.
Are you on LinkedIn, and do you use any other sourcing tools?
Yeah, we use all sorts of sourcing tools. I mean, Seek Out and Human Predictions, both. And then there's a lot of things that we use as sourcing tools that aren't probably supposed to be sourcing tools. Like when you're doing, site searches of Google through all sorts of databases that just happen to be online, right? Like that's not intentionally a sourcing tool. You certainly go to those folks and say, oh, you're running this conference. Are you sure you want to use that as a sourcing tool? But we use that as well. But, and then, yeah, I'm trying to even think through all of the different tools that we use. A lot of it is just like, what can we find? What can we find and how can we use it? Messaging people through Facebook sometimes. Like you just got to think, where are people saying, hey, I'm a software engineer, and how do you get in touch with them when they say that? But yeah, Twitter is where I've actually had the most success with that, because people will actually, like, you can set, you can search or you can search for keywords, right? So when was the last time you searched Twitter for like hashtag looking for a job? If you have a hashtag, you can just click on it and it's a little bit faster. You can track hashtags and you can sort of run analytics against them too. So I guess if you're doing like hashtag looking for a job, you're probably not running analytics against that. So if you're doing like a security engineering role, you could search, DEF CON was a couple weeks ago. So people who go to DEF CON while they're there are going to change their Twitter handle to, Sarah Goldberg at DEF CON. Mm-hmm. And so you can always search like titles. So you can search for people who are named that. So it's not it's on your name. So it's, your mine is like Sarah Goldberg. So not instead of at Sarah E. Goldberg, my Twitter handle, if you want to follow me.
Yes.
But you can change so you wouldn't change your actual handle, you would just change the name associated with it.
Okay, got it. So when it pops up, then you see, but okay, because I was like, what if somebody takes Stacy Broadwell while I'm, okay, got it. Okay. So it's not,
it's not your handle. It's not exactly your handle. It's your name.
Okay. You're blowing my mind for a minute there. It's like, get protected for those 3 days. No, so, okay. So you could do the search for people's names. Mm-hmm. And I like that too, like at like people who are talking about a specific conference, because anybody who's going to be at that conference, of course, is going to be interested in technology or coding or, I just did, I was moderating a Women in Data panel at DataCon, and it was
awesome.
All data scientists and engineers, and we had a booth, and we were completely unprepared for the amount of data professionals who came up to our booth. It was outstanding. So on Twitter, and okay, so I've totally had a faux pas. Like I think I tried this 5 years ago, and I found a bunch of people who were talking about a particular subject, and I tagged them all, in a comment, I posted the job. I posted the job and I tagged them all about the opportunity.
Oh no.
Two of them were like, great, this is a great company. I would love to hear more. And then somebody else is like, is this what Twitter has come to? And like got a full rant on me. And I was just like, oh my gosh, Twitter fail.
I mean,
I've never done it since. I've more been like on the DM now.
yeah, I do, especially like for things that are just like explicitly, hey, I'm going to try to hire you. Like the only time that I would do that is in a tweet to someone who said like, hey, I'm now looking for a job.
Okay.
Because I think it is a little bit about if you're connecting with someone on Twitter, you're not going to hire them right now. You're probably, I mean, you might and you know, things can always happen, but you're much more likely you're going to start like say building engagement so that when they are looking, like you're the first person they're going to think of.
Yeah.
So sort of more steadily building that up. I've like followed someone, liked a couple of their tweets, and then, you know, the next day sent a LinkedIn message. So sort of engaging them on a couple different platforms at the same time. And then it's like, hey, I'm loving the conversation that you've had about this stuff. I know you're probably not looking because you're having this really amazing conversation right here. But you've got a lot of really interesting things to say about whatever the topic is. Would love to get in touch with you about, I'd love to teach you more about our culture or get in touch with you about some jobs I'm working on, you know, whatever your ask is going to be. You know, you describe the role. You say, hey, we're looking for this. I do try, like, when it is, you know, not so much pipelining for the future, but like, hey, I've got this right now. I do usually say, like, right now, this is what we're looking for. I get pretty, like, you know, I always try to answer the question, like, what's making me reach out to you? Like, there's always something. And even if they're occasionally you send a message to someone on LinkedIn and their LinkedIn profile says like data science at company, and that's it. Like there's nothing else online. Sometimes you can spend, you know, half an hour trying to find everything that they might have ever done. Or you can say like, hey, I want to be honest with you. I'm not sure if this role is going to be something that's interesting to you because you have nothing here, but just in case. But there's always got to be, you can always answer the question, why am I sending a message to this person? I usually will just put that right in the message. In addition to sourcing, recruiting, all that fun stuff, I run a group called Queer Tech Club, which is organized on Meetup. So I am in and out of their messaging system every single day. So that's all in person. And we just go to different companies around Chicago. We're going to be doing one the day after Midwest Tech Recruit, actually, on Objective Paradigm is hosting. So I'm really excited about that. Usually we get 100 folks in the room. And, you know, it's food and drinks and networking. And it's been really amazingly successful. I've been helping run it for 2 years now. And it's just magical to see the growth we've had. And folks keep coming back like month after month after month. So I've made some real friends through it as well.
I've not been to Chicago, Sarah. So I may have mentioned this to you that I was going to do a Ferris Bueller's Day Off, like on Thursday, the day after. Right. And just, you know, because I asked my husband's like, you know, Ferris Bueller's Day Off, you should watch that. That was actually filmed. I was like, that was filmed in Chicago? Had no idea.
Yeah.
And then at the end of the day, we're going to work into the itinerary to come to your event. We're all going to come in there.
Awesome. We'd love to have you.
Eating pizza and being at pubs all day. It'll be it'll be perfect.
I mean, that's the way to see if we can
go. Okay, so you're going to be speaking at Midwest Tech Recruit September 18th. Tell us about what you'll be speaking on.
Yeah, so like you said, I'll be speaking at Midwest Tech Recruit on September 18th. I'm going to be talking about sourcing at scale. So how do you manage to continue finding candidates, reaching out to candidates, all of those fun things, and, you know, sometimes spending a lot of time working on finding contact information or crafting that perfect message. All of that stuff takes a lot of time. How do you do that quickly and at enough volume that you can actually get people get in touch with people and make hires? That's what it's all about. So you can expect to take away some actual strategies for how you can combine all of this, targeted outreach with, doing enough of it to actually do your job. I'm really excited.
Oh, we're excited to have you. It's going to be a fantastic presentation. And I think that I can't think of anybody who would be better to present on that with all the experience that you have, and especially the amount of people who recommended you speak at this conference. So we're very excited to have you. And then I guess we'll see you in Chicago. And if anybody wants to get hold of you, Sarah, how can they reach you?
Through Twitter, probably at Sarah E. Goldberg. And then I feel like anyone who's attending a sourcing conference should be able to guess my email address, but it's sgoldberg@oprecruiting.com if you ever need it.
Okay. All right. Thank you so much for being part of the TechRecruit podcast. You have yourself a wonderful day.
Thank you. You too.